call me a cynical Susie, seems to be a bit of a conflict because several of the things he could do right now, whether they go through or not, whether they stand the legal system or not, well, the main focus right now is hoarding money. The DNC is trying to raise money, presidential elections, Senate, Congress, governorships. And a lot of those donors are, obviously the plutocrats who might not really like some of those executive actions.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I'll give you a good example of that. So one of the things that Biden ran on, and one of the things that has been a priority for some time is net neutrality. We're here on the internet, and we don't want our podcasts and videocasts throttled because a big company doesn't like what we're saying, right? And so the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, has been operating for the entire Biden administration under a 2-2 deadlock. There's basically, it's a commission, and there's supposed to be 3 members of the president's party on it and 2 members of the minority party. And the corporate interests, telecom companies, have successfully blocked the president from putting his nominee onto the commission for 3 years, going on 3 years now. And so net neutrality hasn't happened because they don't have the votes for it. And so we're sitting here waiting. And of course, if you remember back, the very first fundraiser that Biden held for his presidential campaign in 2019 was at the home of the head of Comcast. So,
big union buster, by the way, but go ahead.
Exactly. For a man who says he's the, most pro-labor president in history. I think that if you look at the full picture of if you're asking the question, is Biden using the executive authority that he has? The answer is not in every instance. He's done some. He certainly moved the ball forward in some areas. He has the ability with the laws that were passed in the first 2 years to move the ball forward, particularly in these places. And we've done a lot of reporting on this. And I invite your listeners to go to prospect.org/Building Back America, where we are going around the country to these locations where because of the Inflation Reduction Act or the CHIPS Act or the infrastructure bill, there is this activity going on. There are new manufacturing plants being set up. There's new construction in sight. And we're asking, are these jobs good jobs, right? Because that's the key here. I mean, you're going to lose the whole project if you don't bring tangible benefits to people. If you just trade $17 an hour service sector jobs for $17 an hour tougher manufacturing jobs, and people aren't going to buy in. And so we're going to, we were just in Dalton, Georgia, which was the carpet making capital of the world at one point, and it's been sort of a depressed industrial town. And they got a major solar manufacturing factory, a company called Q-Cells from South Korea. And our reporter was in the parking lot, and break time happened, and there were 2 segments of people coming out of that plant. There were Americans and there were South Koreans. And the South Koreans were the ones doing the high skill jobs, and the Americans were the ones doing the assembly line labor. I don't think that's going to totally work. And the Biden administration has the ability to say, if you want a grant, if you want to get federal money or federal tax credits for clean energy production, you need to do it under prevailing wages. You need to do it with union neutrality. You need to do it in this way or that way. You can, and at some level, they are doing this in some cases, but it's been haphazard, and it hasn't gone, it hasn't been fully realized. And we're seeing the results of that in certain of these manufacturing facilities. And so I think the Biden administration can do more. I think they're doing some, but it's a year out, a little over a year out, and you want to put points on the board. All you have is your pen.
And speaking of points on the board, just so happens a lot of these manufacturing plants are in Georgia and Arizona, which Democrats
That's right.
are trying to tip.
The two places we've been is Dalton, Georgia, and Phoenix, Arizona, looking at these manufacturing facilities. We also did one in North Carolina, which is another swing state. We're going to have that soon. And Michigan. I mean, the big three automakers, the UAW has not endorsed Biden yet. And the reason is that the electric vehicle transition, the big three automakers are trying to say that electric vehicles is a different job class than the internal combustion engine vehicles. And you have to separately negotiate union contracts for that new job. Even though it's still car making. And so this is a way to create a two-tiered system to knuckle under labor. And UAW is unhappy that the Biden administration hasn't been out front saying that this is wrong and that the automakers need to cut their workers into the deal when they're making record profits. And I know that Sean Fain, the new head of the UAW, met with President Biden just a week or two ago. We're going to have a story on that as well. So, we're following this.
I actually just spoke with a retired UAW worker this morning because I'm thinking about going back to the Midwest. And he told me, for all of GM's marketing of zero emissions and all that, well, these new electric battery plants are offering a lot less in wages to its workers. So
that's the whole
point.
Trying
to have it both ways.
Absolutely. And they're making huge profits besides. Stellantis and GM announced just in the last week or so that their profits have been through the roof, and they're trying to limit how much they have to share with their workers.
Republicans don't give a shit about lawsuits. I mean, Ron DeSantis has done a lot of things that his culture warrior base likes. Later, judges have knocked them down, but that's not getting as much attention from his base because he gets points for doing them. I keep hearing excuses from Biden and Democrats preceding Biden. I mean, this has always been kind of excuses not to go bold, that they didn't think it would, pass muster. There would be lawsuits. They don't know about the constitutionality. Why doesn't he just take some of these bold executive actions, get points for fighting now before the election, and let the legal side play out?
Right. I mean, certainly we have seen some of the bigger opportunities shot down by the courts. We saw the student debt thing. He did try, to a certain extent there. There was West Virginia versus EPA where, the attempt to deal with fossil fuel pollution in power plants was shot down. I should say that they did use a different authority and then put forward a power plant emission reduction plan. I mean, there's this concept of getting caught trying, right? Where you show to your base that these are your principles, and that even if you're stopped the first time, you try again. I mean, to an extent, you could say that that's what's happening with the student debt situation, right? The day that the Plan A was shot down by the courts, Biden announced Plan B. And I actually didn't expect that. I didn't think it would take, that he would do it the same day. Certainly when the abortion law was changed, the Biden administration was seemingly not as prepared as they could be. But what have they done? Eventually, they set up a process for abortion medication, which is the majority of all abortions these days, to be distributed through the U.S. mail. So there have been instances where they have tried and been caught trying. There have been other instances where you do hear what you're talking about, where they have been reluctant because they're trying to come up with the perfect way to get it by 6 conservative Supreme Court justices. I think there's an argument on both sides, but if you want to be a successful president and you have a record, but certainly since the end of 2022, after Republicans won the House of Representatives, you're not going to have much more of a legislative record. It's just not going to happen. And so if you want to make progress in this last year before you face voters again, you're going to have to use executive authority, areas where Congress already passed laws that give you the authority to do things. And there are a number of fronts on which you can fight. In some cases, they are. Last week, the merger guidelines came out from the FTC and the Antitrust Division that could significantly chill mergers and monopolization, which I think generally is a good thing. But in other areas, they've lagged behind, and we need to see that same urgency, a whole of government approach to making progress, because you only get one chance at this thing.
Last question. We talked about executive actions. It does seem to me you always have Democrats making pledges. If you just give us 2 more senators or 3 more senators, we'll be able to go further. Schumer's saying this now in terms of give us the margin to make Manchin and Sinema not matter. But can't Biden, beyond executive action, make a pledge right now? You give me a Democratic Senate, Democratic House at large enough X amount of numbers, to hell with the parliamentarian. We're going to push for, Bernie and other politicians now are pushing for a $17 minimum wage. I don't know if Biden will go up to that. Right. I think it needs to be 20 or 25. But can he say right now, reelect me with full Democratic control at this number of senators, and no excuses, no bureaucratic rationales? We're going to deliver X minimum wage.
Well, let's see what he says. I mean, certainly what we know is that Biden served in the Senate for 36 years. He's an institutionalist. He came up through that institution. He has never been super out front on the filibuster, but he's been more open to it as he's gone along in his presidential term.
Well, he didn't seem to care. Frankly, they didn't seem to care when they used the filibuster for the debt ceiling before this last crisis. Yeah.
Frankly, it's something that he should absolutely be talking about, and it's something the entire party should be talking about. Everybody running for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat should be asked and be pledging that we're going to get rid of this filibuster if we have half a chance. Certainly, that's what John Fetterman ran on in Pennsylvania, in a swing state, ended up winning. It's what a lot of the members of the Senate have run on. I mean, it's a very tough Senate map. Manchin is going to have a real problem getting reelected, frankly. Sinema is now running as a third party. Any poll shows that she has absolutely no chance of being reelected. The only thing she could do is be a spoiler and throw it to the Republicans. There are tough races in Ohio, in Montana, in Michigan, and in Wisconsin, and there aren't a lot of pickup opportunities. Maybe at the outside, Ted Cruz in Texas. But it's going to be difficult for Democrats to maintain the majority. One way they could do so is to say, yes, if X, then Y. What won in 2020 in the special elections in Georgia? They said, if you vote for us, we're going to give you, they said $2,000, right? In the American Rescue Plan, we're going to give you money. And they did win, and they ended up giving $1,400. And we all know that story, right? But that worked politically in terms of the election. Like, here's the tangible benefit you will get if you vote for us. And so they can certainly run that again. And it's not just minimum wage, it's childcare. It's, all of the things in the Build Back Better bill that didn't get through the first time. They can say, yeah, we're going to do it this time. And we're not going to let the rules of the Senate hold us back.
Right. Thank you so much, Dave Dayen, the American Prospects executive editor. Everyone, take a look. I know in this ADD generation, a lot of us look at headlines and maybe a paragraph, but they do great, in-depth work that you can actually learn something, which kind of once upon a time was a perk of the internet. Check out the American Prospect, and let's keep in touch.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.